guys, it's Patti Robertson with PMI Virginia again. It is springtime in Virginia. You see those azaleas blooming behind me. We are heading into full-fledged rental peak for tenant turns, and I thought it would be a good idea to talk about setting your rental criteria. Whether or not you're a property manager or a landlord, it is really important to have standard criteria, define it, and consistently screen every tenant against the same criteria. We don't have time today to go into fair housing, but I would highly recommend, if you are going to be responsible for doing any tenant screening, either as a landlord or as a professional property manager, that you attend at least once a year a fair housing seminar that's put on by your state. Each state, fair housing in itself is federal, but each state has overlays. I know Virginia does, and it's important that you take a state-specific program so that you ensure you're in compliance. Now, when you're setting your criteria, what's most important is to define it, and it doesn't have to be the same criteria for every property you are renting. You could have different criteria for different types of property or for different properties. What's important is that you screen everybody who applies for that property to the same criteria. I'll give you an example. If you have, let's say you have two properties you're renting right now. One's a really high-end property with a $3,500 a month rent, and the other is a two-bedroom entry-level apartment at $750. Those two tenants may not have the same rental two properties, you might not have the same rental criteria because you're going to have a different type of tenant. If you set a credit score criteria for your two-bedroom $750 apartment, you may not ever find a tenant who's going to qualify. Whereas in your $3,500 a month property, you may want to have credit score as a criteria. Let me give you an example. Our typical rental criteria at PMI Virginia, it would be something like this. Let's say we're renting a place that's $1,000 a month, two-bedroom, one bath, say. And so we would say in our ad, qualified applicants will, that's a positive way to put a spin on it, have a minimum of 3 times the rent in verifiable, dependable income. All right? For our two-bedroom, we're going to define no more than 4 total occupants. And for our criteria, we're going to also say no more than 2 unrelated adults. You don't have to set that criteria if you're in a college town or you want to specifically target roommate situations. You can set your criteria wherever you want, but that's where we like to have our criteria. Then we also say a qualified applicant will not owe money to any other landlord, and that's really important because a tenant could have gotten in trouble in the past and had a landlord take them to court. If they actually paid that debt off and that judgment is shown as paid in the court website, I think they're golden. To me, that's, well, maybe not golden. They've had trouble in the past, they could have trouble in the future. But what we're looking for when we're screening folks is how likely is it that they're going to be successful in the future, and the best predictor of that is what's happened in the past. And everybody has trouble at one point or time in their life, and how they respond to the problems they have is the best sign of character. So someone who has gotten a landlord judgment and has since paid it off would qualify under our criteria, assuming that they look good in all other ways. The other criteria that we always have is no recent evictions. A recent eviction, and we would define that as probably the last 2 years. Recent means, yes, they could have gotten in trouble at some point in their life, but how likely is it that they figured out their scenario and they're out of that trouble now? Again, we would look at that case by case specific, and someone may have had some strange circumstances that, and we feel that it's really past them. Maybe they lost a job and they were out of work for 6 months, and now they have a great job and it's verifiable and reliable, and it's, at or in excess of what our income amount is, that sort of thing. So we look at that individually. And notice that one thing I did not say, and this squeaks a little bit into fair housing, but I think it's important enough to address because I see so many people violating it, is I did not say no felonies in the last X number of years. And I didn't say that because that's now against the law to say. So do we use criminal screening as part of our rental criteria? Absolutely we do. But what we can't do is have a blanket status that says no one with a felony status qualifies for this rental. We have to use common sense judgment is actually what the HUD guideline says. If you're not familiar with this guideline that went into effect in 2016, I highly recommend you search HUD felony tenant screening and read exactly what it says to make sure that you're not violating it. We're in a sue happy environment these days, and I've seen some property managers' Google reviews where it looks to me specifically like that particular prospect was looking for a lawsuit. And property managers are not always responding the right way. So if you're screening tenants, make sure you're up on those laws. What we do at PMI Virginia is we just put that rental criteria in every single ad. It's out there, everybody reads the same criteria, everyone can screen themselves against it. So when we accept an application from someone who looks at one of our rental property, we verify all those questions right in the rental application, and if they're affirmative that they meet the criteria, then that's when we move forward with the screening. So there's never any question, everybody is held to the same criteria, and that's what's going to keep you out of trouble. It will also cut down on the number of people who ring your bell and want to schedule a showing for that property. Preferably, you're scheduling showings for people who are qualified to rent that property. That's always our goal. Sure, there are people that that will answer even though they don't meet the criteria. They think they can get one by you, and that's our job as property managers and good landlords to try to fish those out. So we will touch base on this topic more because tenant screening is so important to your success as a property manager. But for now, we've covered the importance of setting your rental criteria, set it, and then screen every tenant for each individual property to the exact same criteria, and you will be hedging your bet to keep yourself out of hot water. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.